Absolutely cringe-worthy, wasn't it? It's so embarrassing. I actually feel bad for Starmer there. He kind of, that's very good. And then he just kind of shuffles back into line.
Got, the Houthis, you've still got Hezbollah, you've still got these other organisations that pop up that are funded by predominantly Iran.
If I was in charge of the country, I think I would just say every school, every state-run school, every town hall, every council building has to have the Union flag and must be flown. Hello, I'm JJ Anisiobi and welcome to the Daily Expresso. But before we begin, a big thank you and welcome to our viewers from America, from the Caribbean, from Europe. They're from everywhere and we appreciate every single one of you. Today, we are joined by Charlie Rowley. Charlie boy.
Hello.
How you doing?
Very well.
The last time I saw you, you didn't have a beard and now you've grown. Look so masculine now.
Well, I'm keeping up with the time. I'm only trying to emulate you,
God,
JJ. I mean, it's amazing what you can do after a few months of, becoming a bit lazy. Sort of not doing very much. But it's gone down well. But thank you for saying.
Yeah, looking good. Welcome to your first time on the show.
It is. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Popped your cherry, as they say.
Yes.
Right, let's get started. First story of the day. As Donald Trump continued his victory lap after completing phase one of a generational Middle Eastern peace deal, the UK top brass has continued its attempt to put itself top of the pile when it comes to taking credit for this historical breakthrough. Yesterday, we reported how Bridget Phillipson claimed we had played a key role, and Starmer is further promoting this agenda today by talking about our future responsibilities in the region. Now, Starmer wants the UK to kickstart a Good Friday Agreement-style plan to disarm Hamas, and he says the UK is most suited to this role because we once decommissioned the IRA's weaponry. Right? In a further moment of cringe, which demoed the fact that he's not quite the big international fish he thinks he is, Starmer made a fool of himself in this clip, where the UK and Starmer are thanked after Paraguay, Norway, and Spain.
Where's the United Kingdom? Where's Russia? Come here. Is everything going good? Very good. It's very nice that you're here. These people all came in like 20-minute notice, and I think it's fantastic. And we have so many others, and just so many others. And it's such a compliment to what we're doing because what we've done is something very unique and very special. So,
absolutely cringe-worthy, wasn't it? It's so embarrassing. I actually feel bad for Starmer there. He kind of, that's very good. And then he just kind of shuffles back into line.
It was pretty awkward watching, wasn't it? I mean, it reminded me of one of those contestants on Bake Off, that sort of had felt as if they'd been called up with, the best, cheesecake that ever been made and sort of was expecting to sort of win, I don't know, a badge for it, Baker of the Week. And then Mary Berry turns around and says, William, you've got a soggy bottom, and you can get sent to the back of the class, in shame. The way he shuffled in, or marched in and then shuffled out. It wasn't great to see, but, but all of that was put on, by the way. I'm pretty sure, Trump knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that the UK Prime Minister was there.
Do you think Trump's that deliberately?
Totally.
Why would he want to embarrass Starmer like that?
Well, because Starmer, Macron, Carney in Canada had all given Palestine their status, a statehood status, before I think Donald Trump wanted them to. So they were sort of pushing their own agenda, sort of jumping the gun, all the while Donald Trump was in control of the negotiations, in control of this great peace summit. And I think he was a bit annoyed that all of a sudden all these people have come out of the woodwork to back his plan, back his goals, because he's got the breakthrough. And I think it was just a way of sort of showing them up a little bit to say, it's so lovely to see you. Only 20 minutes to spare. They've just turned up. Isn't that amazing? Yeah. I think it was a backhanded sort of a way of just saying, you're welcome to join my team because, I've done the right thing and you were calling for something else.
Do you remember during Trump's first term, I can't remember what the meeting was, maybe it was at the UN, and he walked into the room and there was the Canadian Prime Minister at the time,
Justin
Trudeau. Yeah. He was there and he's laughing and they were all like giggling and sniggering to each other and pointing at Trump and making fun of Trump. And it felt like the mean girls in the school playground. Well, none of those mean girls, none of them are laughing now, are they? Trump has done the impossible. He's done what none of those people could do. And now they have to show respect to him.
Exactly. And I don't know why it's taken people so long to get round the idea that Donald Trump is a deal maker. In his first term, he sort of turned up to the NATO summits to say, basically the US isn't going to fund you anymore. So Europe, you have to stump up to at least 2.5% of GDP on defence. And all of a sudden, people sort of got a bit uppity about it and then realised, oh, okay, we do need to do this. And so that was his first, I think, big intervention back then. But I don't know why people are now so surprised, almost, 8 years on, perhaps, 6, 7 years on, that he's been able to make another deal. But yet people have mocked him and sort of, as you say, sort of cast him aside as a sort of, someone to be managed rather than someone to actually agree with or allow to be a leader. And he's obviously outplayed everybody in this instance.
Why is Starmer trying to put himself front and centre of this deal? Why? Why? Because as far as I'm concerned, as a journalist, I've not seen anything to date that suggests to me that Starmer's been pivotal in bringing peace to the Middle East.
Well, I think that's a brilliant question because, as you said earlier on, Bridget Phillipson did the media round over the weekend to say that the UK had played a leading role. But just like every campaign organisation, rather than a government, you'll say one thing and hope nobody notices or nobody scrutinises or nobody asks a follow-up. You just have a top-line campaign, headlines, which is, oh, yes, no, we were part of this. And we were, okay, so what did the UK do? What was so significant about the UK's role in getting this peace deal? And she couldn't answer that question because the reality is not very much. So I think, there's an element of, okay, what do we do? Or how can we be seen to have played a part? It's obviously by turning up. But I think the reason why Keir, the Prime Minister, whichever name you want to use.
Sir Keir, Prime Minister, son of a toolmaker.
Yeah, exactly. Former Director of Public Prosecutions, don't you know? He will want to be seen to be part of this because I think his polling is not great. Obviously, polling recently has suggested that even people think Nigel Farage will be a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. But he has polled, I think, better on the international stage. There have been occasions where he does seem to be more comfortable, whether it's setting up that coalition of the willing when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, whether it's come to visiting Zelensky, all the back patting and all the rest of it when Zelensky's turned up to number 10. So he's been seen, even though to get into a series of domestic woes and critical because of the economy, because of just not having maybe a political anchor as to where the country's going. He's criticised for all of that. But on the international stage, he does seem to be seen as a statesman to a degree. I think that's why he still polls well. And so I think just anything that maintains that kind of respect for the Prime Minister on the international stage, he'll want to be a part of.
Well, if we end up being the country that goes into Gaza and takes off the weapons, who's paying for that? Who's paying for it? Are we using our own troops for this? Are British people not sick of us getting involved in foreign territories where we actually shouldn't be getting involved in at all?
I think they will. I think you're absolutely right. When we have enough problems back home, people will argue the economy is not doing well. Today, 4.8 million people, unemployed. I think it is. And so, the economy's not growing, taxes going up, a budget that we're looking forward to, I think, in the next few weeks where even more taxes could be imposed. It's not good. So when you then hear maybe about, as a country, we're going to give goodness knows how much to Gaza, to the Middle East, where actually it's quite a wealthy region as it is when you think about
the Qataris, the United Arab Emirates, that they have more money than sense. They could definitely intervene over there.
Exactly. And that's why I think people will, certainly UK voters, I think, will raise an eyebrow as to why all of a sudden do we want to be seen to be part of leading this peace board, or a former Prime Minister might be sort of angling for the job. We'll see whether the rest of the region wants him there, and whether that's the right thing to do or not. But UK taxpayers, I think, would rather their money be spent at home, given our economic woes here.
Well, let's speak about that relic of the past, Tony Blair, because while massive steps have been made in the last few days to create a lasting peace in the region, it would be naive to say that this deal between Israel and Hamas is totally concrete. In fact, there is massive uncertainty over the next phase after bereaved Israeli families expressed anger at the remains of only 4 out of 28 deceased hostages that were handed over during the exchange. Israel has reportedly set the end of today as a deadline for progress on the return, so we'll wait and see what happens there. But there have been other allegations of violating the agreement, and 4 Palestinians were killed by the IDF after crossing the yellow line in the North Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, a video has emerged of Hamas troops killing swathes of men in the streets. Now, it was thought at one point that the man to build some of these bridges might be Sir Tony Blair. And Trump was very, very keen just a few days ago to have him as a part of this board of peace that would help with the transition. Well, a week is a flipping long time in politics, and Trump has now appeared to pour cold water on the idea that Tony Blair is taking this role.
Have you spoken to Tony Blair about it?
You know, I want to find out that Tony would be popular with all, because I just don't know that. And I like Tony. I've always liked Tony, but I want to find out that he's an acceptable choice to everybody.
Why is Trump now changing his mind? Is he hanging out with Starmer too much? He's learning how to flip-flop? Is that what's going on here?
Well, it's a brilliant question because, you know... Tony...
Thank you. I'm full of brilliant questions.
You know, I'm glad I turned up. I'm breaking out into a sweat. But, you know, Tony Blair, he was the name on everybody's lips that was going to be the one to chair this peace board of the peace, and rebuild Gaza. And, you know, it seemed logical because, you know, since leaving Number 10 and since he's stopped being Prime Minister, he had been in the Middle East quite a lot and, you know, developed a lot of work there and helped that region, I think, particularly in Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Criticism that was labelled at him at the time for building their ties and, you know, opening and unlocking their economies to the rest of the world. So, you know, he's got a lot of contacts there, but, you know, he's been there a long time. So whether people feel actually, no, they've overtaken, you know, the need to have Sir Tony Blair as leading this board, that might be the case. But ultimately, you know, they've got to decide. You know, the real leaders in that region, so Qatar, Egypt, Turkey, the people that actually brought together this deal, they need to be the ones that I think would, you know, should and would ultimately have the say as to who they want leading that group. I don't see a reason why Tony Blair can't be a part of it in some way, even if it is just giving ad hoc advice or whether it is being a member of the board. He could even chair it if that's what the region wanted. But in order for it to be a success, the decision has to be made by the leaders of that region.
Well, as you say, Blair does know the region well, but he is also arguably part of the reason for instability across that region, across Syria, Iraq, people being displaced. You could tie immigration now, the immigration problem we have in this country in the small boats, back to Tony Blair and his decisions when he was in charge of the country. So maybe actually he isn't the right person to have anywhere near this, not even in a sharing role, not even as a small advisor in the background. Maybe Blair should stay out of the Middle East completely.
Well, I think a lot of people would be sympathetic to that because of, you know, as you say, the history and now as a UK state, our relationship with Iraq, with Afghanistan, with Syria, and the like. So, you know, and certainly the relationship that has clearly changed between the UK and Israel not happy with the UK government because of the way in which it did recognise Palestine as a state before the ceasefire, before even the release of British hostages, where the families actually didn't want the UK to recognise Palestine as a state. You know, so whatever your views, and, you know, even if I think the majority still would like to see a two-state solution, or even a three-state solution, a solution whereby people of different faiths can live side by side, but all of the fighting can just come to an end because it has been absolutely brutal over the last couple of years. There's no doubt about that. So these are really sensitive questions, and, you know, a lot of thought needs to go into preparing for the answers and rebuilding what has been a flattened area. You know, Gaza has been completely demolished, so it needs rebuilding from not just the infrastructure, but politically and democratically. And, you know, if there are those question marks hanging over Tony Blair's head because of the involvement of the past, people might just want a completely clean break and go to someone totally different. They might not want him at all. And that might be why the conversation has changed and shifted from being him seen as the front runner to lead that peace board to now maybe not being involved as much as we thought or at all.
Who would you like to see helping out with this in the region, if not Blair?
You, JJ. I think you are the voice of reason, and your listeners all over the world, I've heard, will, I think, you know, be fully supporting my campaign to get you there. Only if you can still do this podcast, actually, every day. That's the only. We won't let you go unless this can carry on.
We'll get you back on the show. That was fantastic. But I think what you touched on earlier, some of the wealthy countries around there, Sheikh Mohammed was just the supreme ruler of Dubai, whether it's one of the Saudi rulers, they have. I mean, I used to live in the Middle East for 5 years in the UAE. I traveled to Saudi for work in Qatar. Those places are traditionally Islamic. They still have Islamic law, but they've been able to wed the transition into modern day with some Western policies, modernization, the buildings, infrastructure. I mean, in this country, we can't build a flipping train track from London to the north of the country. It's been 10 years or some nonsense, billions down the drain. In Dubai, they'll build a new mall. It takes them about 2 months. So I think actually those countries should be taking a much more active role in the region and not letting Trump get in with BlackRock or whoever else is going to profit from this mostly. I think, Dubai, Abu Dhabi and Saudi and Qatar, money for days. They know the region, they know the people, they can build.
I think you're right. And it is that balance between, their way of life, which is, predominantly, Muslim faith, Islamic faith, as well as taking the best bits maybe of the westernized, part of society. Because what you can't have when there are still threats, even if you rebuild and should rebuild Gaza, obviously, if you can bring about peace between Israel and Palestine and actually create that solution, there are still threats in the area. So, not least of Iran, not least of all if Hamas are completely, removed and shouldn't play any part, is obvious to say. But, we don't know where the rest of Hamas and its leadership still lie and how it can or might infiltrate itself into the leadership of Palestine as a state, or just taking back control of Gaza. You've still got, the Houthis, you've still got Hezbollah, you've still got these other organizations that pop up that are funded by predominantly Iran. So having a total Westerner, whether it's Tony Blair or somebody else, or whether it's Macron or Keir Starmer preaching about the future,
Anisiobi.
or JJ, but you will probably know more than President Macron. I bet you anything that you do. In fact, I'd bet my house. But I don't have on it, because you certainly don't want somebody who would be effectively seen as dictating Western values or Western views in what is a clearly different kind of cultured area. So it's making sure that, I think you're right. It's Qatar, it's Saudis, it is Turkey even that is modernising very much so. You want to be part of the EU, as we know. So they are. There are some certain countries, Egypt as well, that are modernised but maintaining their faith and their way of life, which I think would benefit that region more than probably what Sir Tony Blair or Macron or Mark Carney or Keir Starmer or anyone else this side of the pond can offer.
Fantastic. Okay, now back to issues at home. A Labour MP has called for England flags in his constituency to be taken down because they make people feel uneasy. Jeevan Sander, the MP for Loughborough and Shepshed, put pressure on Leicestershire County Council to take down the Union flag and St George's flags that have been strung up around the region as part of Operation Raise the Colours. Here's a clip.
And yet here I am, with flags flying from almost every single lamppost. They're getting a bit tatty, the cable ties are coming loose, they could blow off in the wind. And then I see flags painted on roundabouts, and that is just a bit weird. And because you've seen it online and I see it in my inbox, that this does make people feel uneasy. And they ask, what message are these flags supposed to be sending? Now look, I'll take people at their words. People who say this is about national pride. I'm proud of my country too, and I'm proud of our flag. But I do understand why others feel that it's about excluding people.
A Liberal Democrat council has gone a step further and have removed several flags from lampposts themselves. Shropshire council leaders claimed many of the flags around the county had become torn, unsightly or potentially hazardous as a result of Storm Amy. Charlie, has Jeevan Sander got a point about these flags? It's a weird one, isn't it? It's a weird one. Like, he's saying it's okay when the England football team are playing, but then having roundabouts painted with the St George's flag and stuff, he thinks is a bit weird.
I mean, I thought his whole argument was a bit weird, really. He didn't actually make any sort of points at all. I mean, you could argue, and look, I'm trying to weigh up lots of things in my mind because, I was once a former councillor myself, so I can understand, you can't go around just painting over roundabouts, for example. And I think it's, the balance is when you go onto a roundabout anyway, and you might see a sign for, Doris's 70th or, you know, Joanne's 60th happy birthday. That has to be taken down because it's A, a distraction, and B, if you just go around putting up your own signage, you know, willy-nilly, then everybody would do it. And just as so you've got to maintain, whatever your argument, I think you've got to be consistent. And I am totally against, and it grinds my gears whenever you see, even though they've now admitted defeat, those just up oil crackpots who feel the need to chain themselves to the road or put up whatever orange you know, paint. That is totally unacceptable.
Correct.
And so I think putting up your own sort of signage in areas that you shouldn't be doing is also not right. So if it is in areas where you should put the flag up, I would encourage it to be put up. And I think if you want to put it outside your front door, if you want to paint your house into the St. George's flag, I would support you in every way. I might come with my own paintbrush to help you do that, because I think if you want to be as patriotic and demonstrate that, then we absolutely should encourage that. So when it comes to the flag, the lampposts and the flags, I mean, I'm not against it if the council aren't against it. And if they want to see it, then I think that is a positive thing, because it's reminding people that actually we are, you know, there will always be people that want to hijack things and people that want to hijack the flag, whether it's the St. George's flag or the Union flag. But ultimately, it is a symbol of the United Kingdom and everything that is great about it. So it should be something that we should all get behind. I've never really understood the argument of, apart from the people that obviously hijack it, but anybody that says, "Oh, I feel uncomfortable seeing the Union Jack," I think to myself, "Oh, you know, what on earth are you doing here?" You know, whether you're British or not, you know, you can easily leave if you don't like it. But I also think it's an interesting one, because I am supportive of it, but I think it goes to some of these politicians what they don't understand about it. People are very quick to sort of say, "Oh, it's offensive," or "I'm not comfortable with it." But it goes back to something like Brexit. People didn't vote Brexit, as some would argue, because you happen to just be a racist, or you're a Little Englander or a Little Islander. Or you know, it is actually a cry for help and a reminder to say, actually, you know, you politicians in Westminster, particularly in the north, you know, above the M25, you were talking about Loughborough there, and you're seeing it everywhere, particularly in northern towns and cities. But these are the same cities and towns that have been totally left behind. You know, that's why they voted for Brexit, because they didn't want to see Westminster politicians, hardworking taxpayers that send their money to HM Treasury, going off to Europe every now and again and spending all the money at summits there. They felt that they had been left behind. Politicians were not working or delivering to level up the country, basically, and to spread that equal opportunity. So it was a reminder. It wasn't just leaving the EU, and it wasn't just about immigration. It was about saying, "Hold on, Westminster, you've lost your way. You know, I want my Westminster Parliament to work for me and the United Kingdom." So Brexit was so much more than just about the EU, and I think this is a similar situation, you know, where you've got a prime minister who said that he wasn't going to put up tax, wasn't going to raise income tax, national insurance, and VAT. All of a sudden, then puts up national insurance contributions on hardworking people and businesses, which he said he wasn't going to do. That took away the winter fuel allowance, which was completely from nowhere. It wasn't in the manifesto. Nobody saw that coming. You know, you're hitting some of the most vulnerable people in this country. When you're then seeing, perhaps, you know, weekend after weekend protests, whether it's about pro-Palestinian protests, okay, everyone's entitled to protest, but why on earth is Westminster spending so much time and effort on an international issue that is being resolved or could be resolved through the diplomatic channels, not protesting week after weekend? You know, people do feel a sense of, hang about, you know, I want to be seen. I want the government to look at my community and to know that, hold on, you know, we're Britain, we're Great Britain, and where are you, politicians? You know, where is my local MP? And and where is the funding for my local school, my hospital? The NHS is still in a state. You know, I can't get a dentist or a doctor's appointment. You know, the justice system doesn't work. You know, the judicial process of going through the courts is still the backlog there. You know, we've let prisoners out early. You know, for goodness sake. So I think it is a cry for help, as well as saying, look, I'm proud of my country, and I want to remind the politicians in Westminster that you are working for me. You're working for the UK citizens, where they actually feel also there's a sense of injustice, where you do see people coming in small boats that seemingly get to be front of the queue when it comes to those dentists and doctors' appointments, where they're being put up in hotels, where they're allowed, it seems, to work when they shouldn't be working. And that sense of unfairness is why we've seen such a strong support for people putting up that flag. It's not racist. It's not being far right, as the Prime Minister would probably have you believe. It's about standing up just to remind people, look, I'm proud of this country. I want this country to be a great country. But at the minute, we're not. And so it's just reminding politicians in Westminster that, you've got to do something about it.
I think if I was in charge of the country, of this country, not the Middle East, I think I would just say every school, every state-run school, every town hall, every council building has to have the Union flag, and it must be flown. That's it. When the King dies, okay, we do it at half-mast. Then it's back up again after that. I think that would make a lot of people feel, okay, yeah, the country, the government are doing something about it, rather than, because as you say, what people are seeing, and of course we live in the London bubble. People outside of London, the north, are seeing marches in central London every weekend, as you say, with a flag that is foreign to these people, and then they see themselves putting up flags in their town. They're being told, no, you've got to take down the flag which is for your own country. So I'd just appease them by saying, okay, fine. Every school building has to have a British flag thrown on it. I think that would be okay.
Totally, yeah. Every council building, every school, as you say, because I think, flags are symbolic, and I think they're incredibly important, and they can, even though they've been seen as this, people want to paint them out to be a dividing line and a divisive issue. They're actually a unifying issue. And if you just take America, for example, people have got complete opposing views about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris going back to the last election. They've got completely opposing views, whether it's the sort of the woke left that people want to pursue in as some would say in the US versus the MAGA right. But what unites everybody in America still is the flag of the United States of America, regardless of your politics, regardless of what's going on. It is the American dream, the idea of fighting for your country, serving your country. That is what binds people, and that's what everybody has pride in.
But arguably, I'd say in America, the far right have got the Confederate flag, so they don't have to fly the US flag. The far right in this country only have the Union flag. You see what I mean?
Well,
so let's say the far right in this country had the Union flag, but it was purple instead. Still the same design, but it was just purple. Then we could all look at that and be like, oh, those are far right people flying the purple Union flag. A bit like the UKIP flag their logo used to be, right? But whereas in America, their far right often are flying Confederate flags. So the Star Spangled Banner has not been attached to the far right in the US because the far right in the US have their own flag to fly.
Well, maybe we should just get a flag for the far right here and make
point.
yourself known. Not that I'd be out there waving, just to be clear. But you're right. But that's why I can understand when people say that I feel uncomfortable, because it is hijacked by. But I think it's a minority. And I think then people that want to jump on that boundary and say, oh, actually, it means something else. It might do for a small group of people, but I think we should be united in saying, hold on, don't take our flag that we can all get behind and use it in that particular way. But it is still a reminder of the great country that we are.
This Operation Raise the Flag, one of the co-founders of it is a guy who used to be in the English Defence League and runs security for a far-right party, Britain First. That's Andrew Currian, aka Andy Saxon. So, for me, I would think, well, if Operation Raise the Flag is being initiated by someone who is a convicted racist, well, maybe it's a bit racist then.
Well, no, and I think that you absolutely could argue that, and you're absolutely right, I suppose. But I think people, where there is so many issues in this country today, and I think people, I'm not blaming people at all. I would never do that. The great British public know best, always. That's the only thing I've learned in my time in politics. They are always right. But people, you could argue that people were, when it came to the protests outside Epping, the Epping hotels. Now, I don't know at all, but let's say that those Facebook groups or those that had been organised by someone, just like the chap that you're talking about as a reason. But that brought out so many other people who might be completely unaware of that link.
Yeah.
And I imagine that they are, because I think there are so many people that are just fed up with the government anyway, without even thinking about, well, who's responsible for this Operation Flag business.
Yeah.
Whether they could be a totally discredited individual, but the sentiment remains for them that, oh yes, I feel there is a sense of we're losing our way as a country. The priorities of the government aren't right. The priorities of looking after people in the UK, that's all taxpayers. That's people who have come into this country legally, who are working, as well as people who are born and bred here. Something you can say, by the way, before anybody wants to argue that, because it's just a feel that the country's lost something. It's just trying to restore that. So you might not know who's responsible or who's behind setting up the raise the colours, raise the flag sort of operation, but people feel so strongly about it that's why you're seeing so many flags. I mean, you're not going to tell me that all of a sudden all these flags that are going up because we've got all these racists in this country that have just been biding their time. No. I don't believe that. Well,
no, I think you're right. I think this is great business for China. Most of these flags are being bought from China. They're doing wonders for the Chinese market.
Oh yes, our dear friends.
Yeah. Right, let's move on. Before we wrap up, let's clear up one of Britain's most confusing questions. Do you actually need a TV licence? Virgin Media has just tried to simplify it. Basically, if you watch or record any live TV on any channel or on BBC iPlayer, even on catch-up, you've got to pay the fee. But if you only stream shows on Netflix, YouTube or Prime Video and you don't watch anything live, then you're in the clear. Here's a quick visual guide that's been made by Virgin Media to clarify things. So that's the rule. Live TV, pay up. On demand only, you're fine. Right? This is nice and easy. Do you think these rules still apply for the fee in this day and age? Why are we still paying for BBC? I don't even watch BBC. I don't listen to their radio. I don't watch anything apart from Match of the Day. I've no interest in watching Strictly Come Dancing. I know, sorry. I know.
Surprised me.
So why should we still be paying for something that most people don't even care about anymore?
So I originally thought, and this might be exposing my lack of knowledge, but I thought you had to have a TV license just if you had a TV. Because how can you prove that you're only using it to watch YouTube? Or if somebody comes knocking at your door to say, hold on.
To bring them in and go on the smart TV. This is what I'd do. I was like, yeah, come in. What's your name? Bill. Come in, Bill. This is my TV. Turn it on. iPlayer. And it says sign in. I'm like, I don't even have an account. See? It says sign in. I haven't got an account. Oh. So sorry, Bill. Don't watch
Smart.
it. Yeah, that's how I get them.
Well, I just thought you had to have a license if you had a TV just to prevent. But I had been always.
I don't believe you.
A supporter of the license.
Oh, really?
Fee because I've always paid, and knowingly or not. I've had a lot of frustration with the BBC, as a lot of people have, just because of the scandals that keep cropping up, whether it's the people that they seem to be recruiting. It's a bloated organisation. It's moved far away from what I would hope that it would get back to, which is just to inform, educate and entertain. Those just three very basic principles. And I think, the reason why I would still, or had in the past supported still, money going to the BBC is because of things like radio and regional radio in particular, where you don't necessarily have those news outlets. You still want to be. I think there's a lot to be said about local news, which is important, and regional news. And the BBC seems to be the only one that so far currently can provide that because of the money that it gets. But it's dead in the water now. I mean, everybody's moving to subscription services. You don't. The BBC have held on to. I mean, you mentioned Match of the Day, which has been a great programme. And look, Gary Lineker was a great presenter of Match of the Day as a football pundit.
Yes, he was.
But he broke the rules repeatedly and should not have been in that job for as long as he was allowed to. And if the BBC had been able to get with the times, they would have recognised that actually there is so much talent out there. You could have presented Match of the Day once you finished solving the issue in Gaza and become Prime Minister of the UK to make sure that flags fly above every public building. You could then go on to present Match of the Day, JJ.
Yeah.
And you would have done a brilliant job. But there are so many sports pundits out there that would have done a brilliant job, because you can be a celebrity, a sensation overnight these days through TikTok or Instagram or going on a TV reality show. Okay, that wouldn't be the way I'd sort of argue it's best to do it. But new talent is found all of the time. Netflix, you can be an overnight sensation if you're an actor that Netflix have bought into a product or a film by a new director, a new creator, a new producer. And it's instant because there is so much creativity and talent out there. But the BBC have held on to highly paid people that have got way above their station. They've clearly broken the rules, not just Gary Lineker, but other stars that we know about that feel as though that they have been able to just do whatever they think is acceptable when it clearly isn't, and be paid huge sums of taxpayer money. And then when you hear stories about things like, we didn't have the staff at Glastonbury to pull the plug when somebody that was clearly,
Anti-Israel, anti-Semites.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Bob Villain,
Villain
by name, absolutely villain by nature. So, that is ridiculous. And so it's getting to a point where it is such a large organisation, hasn't moved with the times, and when everybody is going to subscription services and where everything is moving online, I would still want to protect TV, and whether it's the BBC, but certainly terrestrial TV, because I just know there is still a generation of older people out there that won't be logging onto YouTube every day to get their news,
to watch the Daily Expresso.
To watch. I know, sad, they're missing out.
You're missing out.
But I think that has to remain for certain groups of people.
I think people would be much more willing to do a subscription service to the BBC. Just for Match Today alone, I'd be happy to pay £12 a month for my subscription to BBC just to watch that one programme, which is what I do with plenty of subscription. There's stuff on Disney, I only watch X-Men, essentially, the cartoon on Disney, but I'm happy to pay for everything just so I can watch that one cartoon.
Yeah, I'm learning about you all the time, mate.
X-Men 97, you've got to watch it. Actually, what are you watching at the moment on telly?
Strictly, funny. I am a fan of Strictly. Can you believe that?
Right. Well, at least, but you pay your licence fee.
I do.
Okay, well, we'll check that.
You heard it here. I can confirm.
Well, Charlie Rowley, thank you for making your debut on the show. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for having me. Loved it.
That is all we have time for. The caffeine has worn off. Thank you for watching the Daily Expresso. Hit the subscribe, hit the like, and join us again tomorrow, where I'm joined by Carol Malone. Bye-bye.